Well, folks, thanks for tuning in again today as we move into the new year on the second day here. And I want to talk about a couple of trends that we're seeing in the United States, also in Canada. And I believe you're going to see this really pick up in intensity. Now, I thank everybody who continues to turn in increasing numbers and tune in and listen and watch at Stockwell Day-to-Day News, in spite of the fact that, some of our stuff people try to suppress it, because we think we're zeroing in on things that matter most and news that matters most, and giving you some of the behind the scenes on what's going on so that you don't have to waste time trying to search a lot of it and to spend too much time on doom scrolling. We're looking at an ongoing story. This is out of Minnesota. I think we're pretty well familiar with this now. Mainstream media has been forced to cover it more, and it's to do with all of the fraud and the social programs starting in Minnesota, and it's now seen to be in the billions of dollars. The governor there, Tim Walz, now being called the fraud father, and really focusing in originally on the Somalian community, but it's gone farther than that, and I want to talk about that because it's going to have some sweeping effects in the US and Canada, and it's usually to do with social programs, and they're finding, for instance, millions and millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, going into groups that do food programs, feeding the poor in various ways, and then as they check it out, they find out there's no poor there, there's no feeding going on in many of these programs. Not to say that there aren't some legitimate programs, there are, but huge fraud going on into programs that don't even exist. And the one that's really taking everything by storm is the daycare program, where the investigation is showing, and it's really increasing now, that there are possibly millions upon millions of dollars, that some suggestion could be billions, that have been paid out in the last few years to people who are purportedly running daycare programs, and then when they go and check them out, they simply don't exist. And the whole thing was started by a YouTuber who started asking some questions and doing some freedom of information filing in that particular state, in Minnesota and in Minneapolis. And he wasn't getting very much of a response back, so he started just getting the addresses, which were public information, and showing up and finding out, wow, here's a daycare center and there's nobody here. And talking to the neighbors, they said, no, there's been nobody there for years, even though the name has been up there. And that has absolutely just exploded in terms of intensity and panic going through the ranks. And now they're finding out that there's all kinds of multi-millions of dollars that have gone to the daycare programs which don't exist. What's fascinating is watching the response from the culturally Marxist mainstream media, which is predictable. What they're doing, and you saw it recently and even today again in the New York Times, they're frantically defending this fraud that's going on. They're saying, actually, it's not really happening like this, and it's driven by racism. Yes, it's racism against the Somali community. I have good news for you, folks. Cheating and fraud are not restrictive to any particular race or ethnicity. It happens across racial boundaries. It happens across gender boundaries. It happens among First Nations, Second Nations, Third Nations, and even non-existing nations. Fraud will happen wherever proper audits are not done. That's why governments claim to have positions like auditors general and auditors who look into these things. But if the audit is not done in a way that really drills down, not just to say, okay, this particular audit of a social service program, it says a check for $1 million, for instance, was given to daycare ABC. And was that check written? Yes, it was. And that's where the audit stops. The check was written, the money went out. But what is needed, and what you're going to see, I believe, at the municipal level, the provincial and state level, and the national level, is more and more fraud being exposed right across all kinds of boundaries and guidelines. And what you're going to see is the rise of independent audit firms who will be asked to do the real audit, the real drilling down type that some big auditing firms don't like to do because they don't like to lose their customers, be it a state government or a provincial government, municipal government, or a federal government. And watch for this to continue as those who are running the programs inside the bureaucracies begin to panic And this is going to give ammunition to elected people who are usually overwhelmed by the bureaucracies to begin contracting out and calling in independent, truly independent, deeply digging audit firms who are going to really follow the dollar and see what got spent and what didn't. Well, talking about dollars being spent, you're about to see things happen in New York City at a whole new level as the new mayor was sworn in. And the new mayor is communist, if not culturally Marxist and very strong socialist. He's going to fix everything, he says, by using socialist means. For instance, they're looking at government-run grocery stores, which are a disaster anywhere they've been tried, not just in the United States. Go to Cuba and see how that works. I've been to the Soviet Union countries before the Soviet Union collapsed, and I watched and looked at the lineups and the empty shelves. Anytime government gets into trying to do business and deliver business, it always turns out to be a disaster. By the way, he was sworn in at midnight, putting his hand on the Quran. So just a remarkable social shift there in New York City. People rapidly embracing socialism and tying in now with a lead Islamist, the Mandami, the new mayor, and it talks about and really gives credence to what I and others have been talking about, cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism, the blend and the joining of Marxist principles with Islamist principles. We're going to get a chance to see how that works in New York City. It's one of the reasons why many people are beginning a renewed exodus out of New York to places like Florida. By the way, in Canada, we're seeing news outlets, the subsidized news outlets like the CBC, doing another report yet again today talking about how Canadians are fleeing from Florida because of the anti-Canadian feeling. Let me just make an adjustment on that because I'm in Florida right now. And actually I was here also last month, came down here, and I can tell you that yes, of course, there's always people upset about politics and politicians on both sides. But in terms of the people themselves, I can tell you Americans are delighted to see Canadians. There are no bad feelings that are going on. Canadians are concerned maybe because they've got Trump syndrome and they just, or even legitimately can't stand Trump, so they're leaving. That's up to them. But I can reassure you, Canadians, do not worry about how you're going to be treated when you come to Florida or in other states I've been in recently. People are friendly, as always in the U.S. Things are good on a people-to-people, human-to-human basis. You're going to have a great time. So just a little note there. And as we watch, you talk about Islamist, we're watching this day by day, the continuing uprising in Iran of the real freedom fighters. This is the citizens themselves who are risk being jailed, who risk being beaten, who risk being even facing capital punishment for standing up against the Islamist regime, the Ayatollahs. And what's interesting is, yeah, mainstream media is kind of interested in that, but it's almost like mainstream media instinctively knows what's coming, because if the uprising is successful, and we hope and pray that it will be, what you're already hearing is the freedom fighters already giving some credit to the U.S. and to President Trump for the pressure that the Trump regime has put on the Ayatollah regime, on the extreme Islamist cruelties that go on. And that's going to be kind of fun, watching mainstream media squirm. And will they do the interviews with the freedom fighters who are thanking Trump and thanking the United States, hopefully, for leading them to freedom? We hope those uprisings continue. Have you heard of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors? That's a real mouthful. Let me say it again. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, also known as SSRIs. These are anti-anxiety drugs. These are antidepressant drugs that are sweeping our nations in Canada and the US. You might know them under names like Lexapro or Cipralex. The concerning thing is the percentage of people that are taking and are becoming addicted to these antidepressants. 22% now, they say, of university students, and the majority of those being females, are on these drugs. And they're saying, and the women that are taking them are saying it's the best thing they've ever taken. anxiety, the feeling of anxiety is leaving them, the feeling of being concerned, the feeling of being depressed is magically leaving. Most of these drugs are being prescribed by your local doctors, and it's done after less than 15 minutes of the doctor talking to the individual, usually a woman, and saying she's got anxiety and she's got concerns and she can't sleep. And within 15 minutes, the doctor has them on these drugs. And there's real warnings now starting to be sent out. And also, as people are drilling down into this a little more deeply, there's this recognition that the feeling of anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. It's our system. It's the very innermost of our being prodding us to think about or maybe do something about a situation that's causing us the actual anxiety. And that ignoring anxiety and ignoring a feeling of being down is not necessarily a good thing. Now, I'm certainly not saying that people should be going through panic attacks and severe depression to the point of not being able to function. But I would say studies are also showing increasingly that as people turn to faith, now I'm sorry, the culturally Marxist media are not going to like this message because remember, one of the things about Marxism is that you have to eliminate religion. You have to eliminate the fact that anybody could be looking upward for answers to their difficulties. But just please keep that in mind if you are dealing with this, if you're having anxieties, if your depression continues, don't rule out some of the words of, some people say, look to a higher power. I go a little more specific. I say you can look to the person of Christ himself who says, listen, even scriptures say that he cares for you. Cast all your anxieties upon him. So all I'm saying is, as people are quick to be able to give prescriptions for drugs, I'm just saying there's also other ways in which people are finding success. Please be careful about these SSRIs. We'll talk about a new worry for parents. Brace yourself for this one. Young people, we're talking 8 to 11 years old. There's an increasing trend in terms of their dietary requirements. Young people are demanding, are you ready? Sushi. They want sushi all the time. They want sushi in their lunch buckets if they have such. They want sushi at home. They want tuna sushi. They want squid sushi. They want salmon sushi. And of course, parents who really don't know and have lost out on the lost art of parenting and even disciplining your children are really starting to get anxiety because these are pretty expensive diets. Listen, here's a thought for you. Until you figure out how to say no to your kids, here's a trick. Take that broccoli that they won't eat, wrap it in rice and a little piece of salmon or tuna and watch them down the broccoli. Watch them gobble up the spinach. It might be a way to go until you figure out how to move them off of their expensive sushi diet. So chew on that for today, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.